Welcome to the Mass Youth Soccer Final Score podcast, assisting the development of players, coaches, referees, and administrators, one episode at a time. Now here's your host, Marcus Cole.
Welcome to the podcast. We're excited to welcome Skip Gilbert, CEO of USU Soccer. Skip, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Marcus. Always good to have a conversation with you.
Well, it's January 2025. Brand new year is here. And of course, we're having Skip on to talk a little bit about the state of the union of USU Soccer, if you will. So many things to talk about, and probably, Skip, the biggest elephant in the room is birth year, school year. Everybody is talking about this. Can you shed a little light on this subject if people don't know about it and kind of where USU Soccer is falling within this discussion?
Sure. Yes, I could say that my emails have been blowing up because of this whole process. But, you know, in essence, about 7, 8 years ago, U.S. Soccer made the decision to shift from school year to calendar year to align more with an international competitive calendar. And what we've seen since then is that at the very top of the player pyramid, you know, that aligns with what the world is doing. But when you think about, you know, we have this year 2.68 million kids registered with US Youth, and most of them are playing for fun. They're playing recreationally. They want to just play with their schoolmates, their friends, you know, who they want to play with. And a lot of times that calendar year kind of blocks that and does not allow it. So we came together with AYSO, with US Club, and really worked with US Soccer to say, look, we've got to do something because we're losing too many kids to other sports. And I can say, you know, having a good circle of friends who are the CEOs of other sports, our friends at lacrosse love the fact that we're on calendar year because they would say it's a recruiting tool for us. We can literally go out and say, if you don't want to have to lose the opportunity to play with your friends, play with your classmates, come play lacrosse. And we were doing so. So at any rate, the edict that's come out of US Soccer is not a mandate. They're looking at some flexibility. So we're going to be going state by state, league by league, to look at really what's that best formula. Ideally, we'd love to be on, you know, that school or what we're going to call seasonal year, not necessarily school year, because every school is going to have a different start date. Some might say, well, it's best for us to June 1st, July 1st, September 1st, you know, whatever it might be. So over the next coming couple of weeks, all of the groups are coming together to really look through some of those details, the unintended consequences, so that by the time we get out of U.S. Soccer's AGM early in 2025, we'll have a good game plan for what the 26-27 season is going to bring to us.
Now, you mentioned that collaboration with U.S. Club Soccer and AYSO, not only on the birth year, school year thing, but also coaching education and things along that lines. Obviously, this is uncharted territory to an extent because there wasn't maybe always that collaboration between these organizations because they were competitors. But what do you attribute this collaboration to? And do you think it'll evolve in the future?
The short answer is yes. I do think it will evolve because, I mean, again, yes, we are all competitors. But when and I think what has happened in the past is it almost becomes less about player development and more about player cannibalism. You know, how do we steal from this team over here? And then how do others steal from us? And at the end of the day, that doesn't help the developmental pipeline. It may help bottom line, but not the pipeline. And so, you know, when I sit with you know, my counterparts at US Club or AYSO, USSSA, whoever it is, you know, we're trying to look at, you know, what are the low-hanging fruit that we truly can work to try to bring us back together as opposed to continuing to fractionalize the ecosystem. You know, and what you had mentioned, absolutely, you know, I mean, the school year, birth year is certainly one of it, coaching education. Our ODP that's been around, oh God, since I was playing in the 1970s, that is another one where we have ODP. U.S. Club has ID2. Why are we doing this in parallel? Why don't we work together? Some of our states are starting to look at a joint state cup competition where U.S. Club and USYS teams can play in the same, and the winners go to their respective championships. So, I mean, if we really sat down and put our minds to it, we can come up with a lot better ways to try to work together. And I think one of the reasons to do it now is, there's that little thing coming in 26. I think they call it the World Cup. And, from a legacy standpoint, it's not so much what can we build to prepare for the World Cup. It's what can we look in the mirror and make sure we're strongest with, so that when the World Cup comes and that wave of enthusiasm is right behind it, we're all ready to be able to take that onslaught of continuing players that want to stay in the system, but all the new kids that want to enter the system.
Speaking of World Cup 2026, what are some of the things that USU Soccer is doing to prepare and also empower state associations to take advantage of this incredible opportunity that doesn't come around that often?
No, it's great, and it's gonna, it's almost starts in 25 with the Club World Cup coming in. But as we look to 26, one of the things that's really high on my, well, I guess if you say it when I get on my soapbox, is really that alternative pathway. And the World Cup can really help cement that. And by alternative pathway, what I'm talking about is outside of all those kids that want to play Division I in college, play professionally, play for their national team, what are the pathways that will cement in their minds that when they become 40 and 50 years old, that they can still play in their bar leagues? And that alternative pathway has to be fun. It has to be designed so you can play when you want, where you want, with whom you want. And we're looking at it as really that small-sided solution. Can we do 3v3s, which are out there, and there are a lot of tournaments behind it, but can we do it more as an officially sanctioned pathway? And, we're the last major sport in this country to do this. Basketball did it. They were having a problem with participation. They wanted to create a spark. They created the 3v3 pathway. It's now an Olympic sport. Football did it with concussions. They came out with flag football. It is now an Olympic sport. Lacrosse is doing it with sixes. Baseball's doing it with fives. Hockey's doing it with streets. But we as soccer kept saying, you got to play 11v11. You got to come to practice 3 times a week. You have to play with who we want to. God forbid you play another sport. If you don't do it this way, quite frankly, we don't really want you. That's not what we should be driving at. That should not be the narrative. And so for all of those kids that just want to play, we want to make sure that if they want to play 11v11, here it is. But if you just want to get out and get touches of the ball, get some great exercise, health and wellness ethic, this alternative pathway can be it. And what better time to really get that going than before the World Cup hits, so that even for people, my age that might want to go out and play, they don't have to worry about an adult league 11v11. They can just go out and play.
That makes a whole lot of sense. We're speaking with Skip Gilbert, CEO of USU Soccer. Let's talk a little bit about the American developmental model of player development. I know that USA Hockey built the program with the USOPC, and from what I understand, pretty effective program. Should soccer embrace that type of model going forward based upon what you just said?
And I do absolutely firmly believe in that. And I'm probably the minority, because when you think of the player development in the United States, many of the architects came from Europe. And the European system is not necessarily club-centric. It is funded by the government. Our government does not. And so therefore, the way to do that is through the club system. And what we're seeing, not just in soccer, but some of those other sports, is that we're now creating elite development pathways for 6-year-olds. I mean, that can't happen. And the ADM and what US Hockey did, and again, with the USOPC, was they were losing kids at 14, 16, 17 years old because they were just burnt out. They'd been playing high-level, elite developmental hockey since the age of 6. and they just couldn't do it anymore. And so what the ADM really dictates is that for any kid under the age of 13, you are a player. We're not going to divide you between travel, recreation, elite, select. We're not going to put you into any category. You are a player. It keeps the focus locally, so there's local competition. It's all on developmental fun, the tactics, the technique. And so by the time you get to 13, then you're mentally, physically ready to step into either that competitive pathway or that grassroots, I just want to play for fun pathway. It kind of goes with the whole 3v3 dynamic, but this really crystallizes it so that parents at the age of 8 aren't looking at people, like myself. And I've had this happen. Someone came up to me and said, my 8-year-old is out running. Do you think they have what it takes to be a professional soccer player? And I just really want to say you should go home. But we've gotten into that mindset that we're now starting to say, if your kid's not in our program at age 8, they don't have a chance of getting a D1 scholarship. And that's so wrong on so many levels. So the developmental model really helps to, again, Americanize our developmental pipeline for what our country stands for and the unique features that we have because we're not funded by the government.
That makes a whole lot of sense. This wouldn't be a State of the Union with you without talking about some of the changes upcoming for USU soccer. One of them being the national championship format for 2026. Obviously, you have a board meeting coming up in early January. So it seems like the right time to kind of talk a little bit about what these changes are looking towards and what are we looking to accomplish with these changes.
Sure, that's a great question. And again, I will apologize to all of your listeners for my voice. I was at the NCAA College Cup on Monday. I'm an alumnus of University of Vermont, and we won our first national championship. So I'm a little hoarse. But that being said, over a year ago, we looked at our national championships. Again, I'm always asking our staff, to look in the mirror for all of our programs. And if we were building USYS for tomorrow's players today, what would it look like? And the way our national championship is structured, you play through your state cup, you go to the regionals then qualify you into the national championships. The problem is if you look at the last 13 years of national championship competition, the 1,700 games or something like that, in group play, 80% of all wins were from 16 states. And so if we're truly an association of 54 member states, we want every player, coach, parent to think that if their kids are in their state cup and they go into the next level, that they have a legitimate shot of winning a national championship. And so we're going to look at our nationals, and we've looked at, should we break it down into 3 divisions? And right now we're looking at 2 divisions and with a promotion relegation system so that as everything moves forward, if you're in that lower division or the division 2, we don't want to separate it by better or less better, but it's really the competitive standards. And yes, it's kind of a model like the NCAA. And I'll use another New England school, which I've used as my example, Middlebury or Williams College in Massachusetts, incredible athletic institutions. They're Division III for a reason based on the dynamics of their athletic audience. And they've got a great American football team. But could you imagine putting a Middlebury or a Williams against an Alabama or Ohio State? It's not going to be a fair competition. But again, we don't want to take anything away from that institution. So we're trying to do the same sort of thing with our national championships so that every kid, when they start the season, they can think we have a legitimate shot of winning a national championship. So it goes in front of the board. We've had some great discussions. We've had working groups with a number of the state associations. We socialized it across all state associations, and we're going to be hopefully coming to the end of the discussions in the January board meeting.
That sounds great. As we wrap things up here with Skip Gilbert, CEO of USU Soccer, my final question to you is League America Festivals. Can you talk to us a little bit about the concept of this?
Sure. And again, when I first started 5 years ago, I was out on a run, and I hate the term recreational player because generally speaking, it's preceded by the word just. He's just a rec player. She's just, and it minimizes their own self confidence and their worth of being a soccer player. So we came up with the branding concept of League America. And so that anybody could play. And the goal being, if I'm an 8-year-old, how cool would it be to say, hey, I'm in League America, and ultimately, wouldn't it be great for adults to take it so that, adults play in League America? And so the festival idea was to take that concept of 3v3 and bring it from state to state to state, where on a given day we'll take 4 or 5 hours. We'll bring everybody together that they can play with, whom they want, and they'll just go out and have a fun celebration of the game through 3v3 small-sided competition. And if we can do that, the legacy is we're working to be able to create almost I think the Bazooka Goals have a concept where, for a few $1,000s, you can have a 3v3 field. And if we can do it right with the right sponsors, every community will get all those goals to give to a rec center, to a school, to be able to construct and allow kids to play when they want. And if we can do all of that, then truly everything starts to come together for what we want to accomplish as we go into the World Cup, and accomplish to keep kids more, playing more as they go through their teenage years into their adult years, and finally when they get to my years.
Absolutely. Keep them playing, baby. Keep them playing. Love it. Skip Gilbert, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Mass Youth Soccer Final Score podcast. Join us next time for another informative episode. Copyright 2024. All rights reserved.